G'day guys and welcome. My name is Michael, I'm the DeadAussieGamer, and I'm joined here by my friends.
Me, Robert Hartley GM.
Me,
You can tell,
Dreaded GM.
You can tell we're very practiced at this.
This is so awkward. I'm sorry.
And the three of us, we are tabletop role players, professional entertainers in the TTRPG scene. Robert through, of course, Viva La Dirt League D&D, as well as his own stuff as Robert Hartley GM, and of course Dread, who we know from a wide variety of charity streams, and of course the Dreaded GM channel. Today we've gathered in to talk about One D&D.
One D&D.
One D&D. We did it
as one voice.
One voice.
Yes.
One D&D.
Practice this, guys.
Now, there's a lot of people right now.
We did it for like a total hour, guys.
We
spent a
practiced.
whole hour on it.
This is why we go to rehearsal.
Just the intro.
Okay.
So yes, we are here to talk about One D&D. As many of you know, Wizards of the Coast at Wizards Presents announced One D&D as well as some playtest material, and we have decided to make a very unrehearsed video to go through the material and talk about our...
I mean, you say, as you know, but there will be people from our communities, particularly mine, and I can speak for my own, that don't know the first thing about it until I am the lead into anything D&D related to a lot of my communities.
Well, in that case, that seems like you've just volunteered to tell us what is One
Sure.
D&D, Rob.
It's 6th edition D&D.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Just straight up. It's like, yeah, cool. We're gonna try and make a video that doesn't like call anyone out or fight anyone. It's just straight away 6 D&D. That's it. Just put a big 6 on it.
So D&D came out way back in the 70s, and then they were like, let's change some rules up and make it a little bit different. And so they came out with a 2nd edition, and then they did the same and came out with a 3rd edition, and then they came out with new rules that were backwards compatible, and they came out with 3.5 edition. And then certain people at Paizo went, actually, was it Paizo to begin with, or did they sell to Paizo? Anyway,
well, no, they 3.0 and 3.5 released the OGL, the Open Game License, so they actually made the base rules for D&D available for open publish.
And then, yeah, but I'm saying the people who created Pathfinder first went
then that was
like,
we'll
change some of this and change some of this and change some of this and became Pathfinder. Then there's 3.5, there's Pathfinder, and then D&D went, oh, let's create a new edition that's not backward compatible, and they created 4th edition. And then it was widely considered a bad move. And then they created 5th edition. And then now they've said, about a year ago, they said something's coming in 2024. It's going to be the next generation of D&D. And people were like, oh, it's going to be 5.5. And then they just announced what that next generation of D&D is going to be. It's called One D&D. And the theory is that it is not a new edition. It is going forwards. They're not going to do the edition model anymore. They're going to be doing like a out with the old and in with the new gradually. As new rules are introduced, they sort of phase out other rules, but it will always stay compatible with the start of 5th edition is the idea. But I mean, there's the thing that some people are confused by, I think, is that they're coming out with a new player's handbook, they're coming out with new monster manual, coming out with a new dungeon master's guide. There's a whole bunch of new rules and character creation and things. So at what point is it just a new edition anyway?
And the reason they release new editions is because what it does is it resets the system. It lets people bring in new ideas and stuff like that into the book. So, like, I think that, you know, people that have been around for a while are used to new editions.
Yeah. There's, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, there's an element of resetting power creep and things as well involved. Yeah. Like, the longer an edition is out, the more supplemental material has been released for that edition. New races, new classes, new options for this and that and the other, new spells, new feats. And the more things you introduce, the more power gamey you can become with it, because there's more options for creating the perfect combination of this thing from this supplemental book and this thing from this one, and creating something that's kind of broken.
New editions have
no
a
longer
function.
Resembles what it looked like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it also does help against things like rules glut, where even introducing someone new to a system that has rules glut, you either have to have all the materials and then also have to have a way to easily access it. Now, D&D 5th edition has D&D Beyond, which is amazing and so useful for that particular tool. But if we look back at the earlier editions, like say 3.5, there is almost no way to practically go through 3.5 material without the books. So, like, if you introduce someone into it, even the GM, if you don't have the same source materials, it can be quite jarring. One D&D, the evolution, the new edition, the new face of what Dungeons and Dragons will be, has lots and lots of purposes. Many of which come from obviously things like you were saying, rules glut and all of that. But today we're going to be not only discussing, kind of our thoughts on what One D&D has, but we're going through the playtest material and formulating our thoughts and our opinions and discussing it with one another for you guys at home, so that you guys can know what we think. Now, keeping in mind, guys, take everything we say with a grain of salt. We are 3 very different people, 3 very different DMs, and of course, we are different to you. So come up with your own thoughts and ideas on the system. But if you want, this is just what we think. It's not more or less important than what you come up with, but, we have faces too, and we will use them.
When they announced this new thing, One D&D, they also released Unearthed Arcana, which is a place that it's sort of an area where they release new things that they haven't officially made into the game yet, but it's a way of Wizards saying, this is stuff we're working on. Can you guys help us balance it before it's released? What do you think of it? Is it too powerful? Is it not? Would you play it? It's called Unearthed Arcana, and it's like the stepping stone towards official content. And what they've done is, when they released One D&D, they also said, here's some Unearthed Arcana about the new rules for creating characters specifically. So they've released like one chapter of the new player's handbook, or what they're intending it to be. And they've said, have a look at it, have a play with it, pretend like this is actually the rules, and then tell us what you think of it. Tell us what you think of these rules, and they can be they can be changed. Nothing's set in stone yet.
Yeah, exactly.
They're looking for feedback, which is great.
Yeah, very important feedback. Again, if you're watching this and you are already doing the playtest stuff, be sure to let people know what you think. Not just on your social medias, not just your friends. Actually, go into D&D.
Yeah.
Go and let them know.
If you don't like the new rules, or you really do, and one way or another, they then either change something you liked or they don't change something you didn't. You can't then go, but I was complaining to all my friends about it. Like, you need to actually officially let them know through the feedback forms and stuff. Like, this is what I don't like and why. Or this is what I found during playing this one shot. I played a 12-episode one-off campaign using these rules, and this is what we found at our table. Blah blah blah. It's important that they get that information.
So the first thing that gets brought up in the new Unearthed Arcana thing, which I want to also point out really quick, is that the material apparently is aiming at being released in 2024. So this stuff still has lots of time for development. So yeah, just keep that in mind. The playtest material at present is character races, character backgrounds, starting languages, and feats, and then just a few sort of rules glossary. Yeah. Kind of basic twists and changes and stuff like that.
I think they have a new race in there as well.
Yeah.
Race. Yep. But and we'll come to that as well. Now, character creation is now called origin. So determining your character's origin instead of just simply building your character involves 3 steps: picking a race, picking a background, and picking a language. Obviously, nothing too drastically different in terms of character creations. Kind of the same.
No, thing. They've also obviously also picking a class is going to be a big part of that, but they've not included the class section of the books, because there's going to be a lot more. Yeah. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more backlash when they release the Unearthed Arcana about the new class changes and things. Like that.
You know what? You know what? I'm going to say this right now. I think if they get rid of paladins, I will almost do a 180 on this on my thoughts on the playtest, because Paizo literally listened to a round table talk I did and then made the champion instead of the paladin. And I was like, yes! It was very cool. And it was a lot of fun. It was, we had Eric Mona actually have a chat with me, and it was awesome. It was great. I was very happy.
Power. This guy's got power.
Power. All right.
So they've just introduced everything about your character creation except for class, your race, your background, your languages, your feats, and things like that.
Yeah.
The first thing that I was a little disappointed to see is that they're still staying with the word races, and it's such an easy change that a lot of people have been talking about. That that why not say origins or species or ancestry or just anything that gets it away from this idea of them being just different races, which a lot of people have problems with, I think.
What do you think about that, Dread?
I agree with that. I mean, we like, I do think Origins is better. You don't need to sort of have races there. You can have like cultures or whatnot, right? Or
well, the cultures are leaning towards having
more
cultures
cultural stuff,
and that's tied into the background, which is great.
Yeah,
but
like, why not
there is still like a zoological sort of aspect to, are you an elf or are you genetically an elf or a human or a dwarf? Those are genetic differences.
Like,
people calling them races is not the term that you would use in zoology to differentiate things of that difference.
So what words would you put there instead? Like
species would be the one that would make sense scientifically, but it also sounds a little bit too scientific. So I've seen a lot of people saying ancestry.
Ancestry is great.
Ancestry.
What is your ancestry? Like, you've got elven ancestry. Makes sense.
Yeah, and that doesn't define your character either. Like, for example, if your character, let's say you're an elf raised up in dwarven society, you might identify as a dwarf, and that'd be perfectly fine. But it doesn't change your ancestry from being an elf.
Yeah, you're an elf. Yeah. You are elven ancestry, but you take the dwarven backgrounds and dwarven feats.
I think it works. I think it works very nice. And yeah, I mean, look, I mean, honestly, a lot of the stuff and a lot of the terms that we have just become familiar with and become comfortable with is just that, it's comfort. But in my opinion, success is not comfortable. It is. Moving forward and change is not, you kind of have to like question these things. It's like, yeah, we were comfortable with this, but should we be? Can we change this? Can we do different things?
Yeah.
So that would be definitely the first thing I would suggest is like, yeah, look at renaming the idea of races as well.
Like, Ancestry is great. I like Ancestry a lot, especially since, like, they already sort of like glossed over the combination of two different like humanoid kinds, and they're children of different humanoid kinds.
Yeah, disappointing there.
Yeah. So.
All right, so let's take a look at the overview here, because the playtest comes with this nice long list of overviews of what you need to know about your character's origin. Firstly is your creature type, which I think goes into that sort of scientific element to it, where there is like, you are an evil outsider, you are a elemental, you are a beast, you are a whatever. So the creature types are usually going to be humanoid, and then in brackets usually whatever the ancestry happens to be.
For the vast majority of playable races, you're going to be humanoid. I think they will. I think all of the ones in this outline have been humanoid, but they're leaving themselves open to saying Fae in future when you are able to play a satyr and satyr and a centaur and a fairy and stuff.
Yeah. I like that.
Maybe elemental. Maybe they'll change Genasi to elemental or something. But yeah, they'll generally be humanoid as the creature type.
Yeah.
Obviously, character size, character speed, the character's lifespan.
Well, the character size shouldn't be glossed over, because a big change now is that you get to choose your size for a lot of the different races. Now, if you're a human, you can choose to be a small creature rather than a medium creature. And hobbits, obviously, halflings just remain as small. But elves, I think, get to choose. I can't remember which ones get to choose. We'll have a look in a second. But it's definitely humans, tieflings. The new race that they've introduced that are basically the angelic equivalent of tieflings. And all of these things, you get to choose whether you're a small or a medium creature.
Do they change it whether or not you can be large or not? I don't think they did.
No,
you
can
only go medium.
Yeah, this is just the glossary, so there'll be more details as we go. I mean, straight up, I would say, just from that initial, like, having read that, my thoughts were, I'm not overly keen on it for things like, humans and creatures that do have that static idea of what their size is, but I love the idea for like tieflings, Aasimars, Genasi and stuff like that, because the idea behind those particular races is that they're supposed to be from different ancestries, so you're supposed to have that. So I mean, why is it always human? Why is a tiefling always a human plus fiend? Why can't it be a gnome?
So a fiendish gnome would be a tiefling as well, but have the gnomish size.
Exactly. I think stuff like that is really strong as an idea.
I think that's a great point that I hadn't really thought about as well, is that like tieflings as part of the tiefling stats should have like a different ancestry. It should be like, choose one of the other ancestry. You get the creature type, size, and speed of that ancestry, but you lose all of the individual traits and instead replace them with this other thing. So that it's like, oh, I am a gnome. I was born to gnomes, but I have when I was born, I had horns and a tail.
Or even if you've
I mean,
got
that
like a
sounds sick.
tiefling as an individual stat block, to have one of your abilities be choose something from your from a different ancestry. So choose a racial feature from one of the different ancestries.
Right. Yeah.
That could also be another way to go about it.
You're gonna get into power gaming unless you then categorize all the different racial stats as to be like, oh, this one's more powerful than this one. This one's about on the same levels, or
Yeah, that's true.
categorize them.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you're
we
gonna
can,
get
we
into
can, we can
power
cover
gaming.
that when we go through these ones. All right. Then we got the lifespan and the special traits, which of course are the features that each of these origins have. Then there's a big list of the background stuff that you'd get, which are the ability scores, which you get the ability boosts, skill proficiencies, tool proficiencies, language, feats, and equipment. Now I've got a lot to say on the background stuff. I imagine everyone really does.
Yeah,
that's probably one of the biggest changes.
That's the meat of what's changed here, is that you no longer get your ability score from your race, your ancestry, your species. You only get it from the background. So if you were an elf, but you were raised in a dwarven community, you might be hardy and stocky and muscly rather than your elven lithe, because you've been raised mining with the fellow dwarves. And if you're an orc, but you were raised in a non-orcish society, then you're no longer strong and hardy and have high constitution. Maybe you're high on intelligence because you were raised with gnomes or something.
And we've already seen that change with the ASIs a little bit with Tasha's, right? So it's
the writing was on the wall for years about that change, because they were saying like, oh, now you can just get to choose as part of coming up with your race that you choose. You just get to choose which two ability scores to put them into.
Yeah,
and now it's officially part of the background rather than the race.
Yeah, exactly. 2-1 or 1-1-1.
I do kind of like, because at least there's like now nature and nurture contributing to your primary stats. I do like that. But yeah, that is the meat and potatoes of
what's your thought on it, Dread? Moving the ability score to background.
I don't think attaching it to background helps either, right? Because like it takes away storytelling opportunities, right? So it's like you're a soldier, you have strength and plus con, but there are different types of soldiers, so like it I feel like they've almost flip-flopped on it, right? They're attaching it to another thing that kind of like again gets into that whole pigeonholing sort of idea.
But the soldier is just one of the examples. The direction they've gone with it is they're saying the in the PHB 5e was just here are the however many it was, 12 different backgrounds, and then at the end of that chapter they said, you can just customize your own if you want.
I think
they've swapped that around. They're saying the idea is going to be focused on, you're going to make your own background.
Yeah.
And then the footnote at the end of that chapter is going to be, if you don't have the time or you don't have the creativity to make your own, here's some we've made for you. So the soldier that they've given is not like, they're not going to be pushing that to people to be like, here's the only ones you can play, and therefore you'd get +2 strength.
Like you could easily go with like, here is a soldier and here is a Persian soldier. Persian soldiers use a lot more dexterity than they do strength, so we're going to
exactly.
Here's a tactician, and you just create your own background, name it whatever you want. You could be like, I'm a diplomat, and so I put 2. I'm still a soldier background, but I'm a diplomat because I've put my 2 into charisma instead.
So the fact that we're already discussing it is such a good sign, because I mean the thing is D&D is a creative process. It's a thing, and the fact that hell we're already talking about like what can we make and what can we add, that is such a positive, I think, mindset to have in this. It's a canvas rather than a box to put your characters in.
I do like the idea of like quick make, like when you consider it like, if you don't have time to make one, you can just be a soldier with these
here's a thief, here's a soldier.
The one thing is though, like not every GM will allow the creation of customized backgrounds, right? But I guess that's up to the GM and their table.
They will when this edition is released, though, I think, because that's the focus. That is going to be the default. It's not going to be touted as an optional rule like it is in PHB, like it is in the PHB and 5e. Like the customize your own is kind of like a meh. Whereas now it is just straight up like they are balancing it so that regardless of which tool, skill, language you choose, they're all going to be the same power level. And so exactly. The default position is you just create your own background.
And they're just providing you with a format. Here is the template. Go and do the thing.
So my first thoughts when I heard the ability score was moving to background was like I wasn't about it. Like I thought, that we shouldn't be removing ability scores from Ancestry because there are genetic differences to an orc versus a gnome or whatever. One of them's going to be stronger. But then I thought about it more, and I was like, now I'm leaning towards I'm fine with it being like I think I'm still in the vein that I would probably have, if it was down to me, I would probably still have a +2 from your background and then a +1 from your ancestry. So
Yeah,
like there's just like a hint of, look, if you're an elf, you're slightly more lithe. If you're a dwarf, you're slightly more hardy. If you're an orc, you're slightly more strong. And I've been thinking as well that it's basically just the physical stats, because the mental stats don't matter. Like if you were raised book smart as an orc, then you can be just as smart as anybody else, kind of thing. But I would probably have a +1 to one of the 3 physical stats based on your ancestry, and then a +2 to whichever stat of your choice based on your background. But I can see why they've just gone.
Yeah, see,
put it all into background.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Rob. Like, my biggest feeling towards this, and I've caught a bit of flack on it already, is I do think that it needs to be both. It should be both, and both physical and mental, at least, is how I feel. Because the thing is we're not talking about race really. What we're talking about is species, and species do have distinct differences. It's easy to point out differences in races in terms of physical attributes, because like the difference between a gnome and an orc, right? It should be easier for a orc to become a say a soldier because of their natural physique than it would be for a gnome. But at present, there's no representation of that. There is no actual difference. You could have very easily a gnome made.
If this is the world that orcs aren't inherently stronger than hobbits and halflings and gnomes, then you would see armies made up of equal numbers of both, kind of thing. And I just don't think it just doesn't make as much sense to me that we're ignoring that, or to I don't think it's equality to ignore the differences that do inherently exist between us. Like, we should acknowledge and encourage and celebrate the differences that we have.
You're correct, but you're incorrect in the one thing. This is actually equality. So it is putting everything on an equal level, which is equality. What we're looking at is what should be equity. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So as you say, yes, there should be these differences which are celebrated among these different species of individuals. Like, don't think of it so much as this person is better, right? Because I think we get locked up in this mentality that we have to push the limits with everything that we do. A gnome wizard will always be better than an orc wizard. It's like, well, no. Why are we focusing on comparing? Why not just look at gnomes are good wizards? You can also have good orc wizards. Honestly, a +1 difference is such a minor difference. Is if that is the point where you are saying that you are better than you, there's something wrong. Like, there's nothing to get.
Especially because the only difference is basically in the first 4 levels, because then you get your ability score improvement, and you can add an extra 2 to whatever you want and be better.
Exactly.
And you have like rolled stats versus like.
And they've got rolled stats and point by, and you can change up your stats as you want.
Yeah.
I've just always been a fan of, if I wanted to play a halfling barbarian, then I would do so knowing full well and making that conscious choice that I am playing against type. I am playing against my physical inabilities, the fact that I only weigh 40 pounds.
And overcoming them is such a rewarding experience,
There's huge character arcs and huge stories can be told from a person who is overcoming their
I think the big difference as well is that they don't impose character limits or racial limits, right? So it's not like a halfling can't get to 20 strength or can't get to 20 con. They start up. They don't start off with that +1 or +2 bump.
That boost from their genetics of being smaller than everybody else.
Yeah. And
whereas an orc does, because they have larger, more muscular bodies.
Yeah, and I think
as part of their genetics.
And I think that's going to be an important step, is if they are going to add boosts to ability score and boost to their race and their background, is to make sure that you're not imposing penalties, because that, I think, is where things trip up.
They stopped that pretty fast with the orc having a -2 to intelligence on the original monster race.
Negative strength.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, and
exactly,
sunlight
because,
sensitivity and stuff like that.
I mean, we get why it's happening, but the thing is why tear things down when we can build things up, you know? And I think building things up is the recipe to celebrate differences. It's not about I'm better than you or I'm worse than you. It's about I'm really good at this thing or I'm really great at that thing. Like, I mean, look, let's talk like mental stats now, because I mean, like I said, it's easy to look at physical stats, but the mental stats are a bit tricky. If I've got a +1 intelligence, does that mean I'm more intelligent? Well, not especially. What it might mean is that you've simply got the brain chemistry to be able to absorb information and retain it a lot better than another species of creature. You can teach monkeys sign language, for example, like chimpanzees, right? But if you teach a person sign language and a monkey sign language, they would, both be able to speak it. The difference is it would take the chimpanzee a little bit longer to retain.
They wouldn't have as many words in their vocabulary. They wouldn't have as much syntax in their sign language and stuff. The big sort of arguments and pushbacks I've seen are from people who, possibly because of the fact that they're calling them races, are equating it to saying things like, "Oh, Asian people are better at maths," and it's like, well, no, because they're a different race of human. They're all human. Humans of this race and humans of that race, they're all human. What we're talking about is a difference in, is a gorilla as smart as a human? Yeah. Is a gorilla stronger than a human?
Yeah. Just to prove a point of that, I mean, I would honestly say that between the three of us, if you were to play, who's the one that's good at maths? Just saying.
It's me. Surprise.
So we're living proof.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just don't think that that's the right argument to be saying about why we should be removing any sort of bonuses that you get from nature of your ancestry. Yeah. Because if you are a different species, I'm not saying that a different human from a different continent would get a different alignment score. I'm saying a different species entirely with an entirely different evolved past has a different physiology. Yeah, I mean, a gorilla is stronger than a human.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, I don't know. I'd say most fey creatures, because of the nature of their very, what's the word for it? It's like, it's not whimsical, but it's like this very almost like spiritual, very mysterious kind of nature of them. I think the force of personality of fey creatures is greater. There is this mystique about it. There's something enchanting
throughout time, across lots of different cultures, Celtic cultures, and all sorts of Brittany cultures. Absolutely. And stuff. So Anglo-Saxon cultures, French cultures. There's all these sorts of talked about fey creatures and fairies and things, and they're all about charming. They're all about lulling you into doing things you shouldn't, or tricking you. They're all tricksy and lulling and deceptive, and 100%. I think having an addition to charm makes sense.
Yep. And to be clear, just so that I think we're all kind of like, I mean, we'll go to Dredd because Dredd hasn't. We'll get Dredd's thoughts on it, but I think what you and I are saying is that there should be both. There should be boosts for both background and ancestry.
And I do think that the +2 should come from your background, or the 2 different +1s if you're going for the 3 +1s. I think you should get just a +1 from your ancestry, which indicates like, hey, you have got a little bit of a boost because of who you are, who you were born. But the majority of the work comes from how you raised, what training you've done, what sort of lifestyle you've led.
Dredd, what are your thoughts? Motorboat, excellent.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think because like we're like, the one thing I'll say is that we do get benefits from the species or the ancestry in way of like in way of features and stuff like that. I think that the attributes I don't mind the attributes being disconnected from the species or from the ancestries, and having them in background or having them in training or vocations, I think is okay. So I think I'm actually against type there by saying that like I don't mind them. I didn't mind that they would come down from Tasha's, right? I do agree. I do like having challenges to overcome with characters that I play or see at the table, but you could easily work that in narratively, or you could have that sort of applied through the character rather than having it tied to the attributes. I guess I'm a little bit more, if the word is right, the term is right, liberal when it comes to attributes. Because I can imagine, like, you know, for example, a halfling family that are just like bodybuilders, and they're just like that family of halflings that just like, we go to the gym every day. That's what we do. That's how we get strong. And that just kind of adds some story for that character. So, you know, and that comes down to nurture rather than nature. So it's I think that's where I stand with it. I don't mind that we devoid the we separate the stats from the ancestry, but I don't know if that's just because I like to allow people to customize their characters at the table for what they want to see, whether that is to play into a negative or play into a positive. So, for example, I played a human druid one time that was corrupt by abyssal corruption, and I gave him a negative con. I think he had like a 6 con, but he was a druid. So I put that dump into con, so I was really sickly, and I did that through the character generation outside of the actual stat block. So he was very sickly and weak, but when he turned into his druid form, obviously his con switched. He took on, so he was a demonic bear, and that was a lot of fun. But he like in his normal form he was sick, and that wasn't because he was a human. That was because of his story, and that was because of my narrative choice, rather than being sort of like choosing the race. I was like, no, I have control over this. I can take a dump stack. I'm gonna put that into the negative, and that was a lot of fun.
I will. It hasn't introduced it in this PDF, but I will be interested to know what they talk about with stat generation, whether they've made any changes to the point by, the whatever.
I'm very interested in that.
I've always been a little bit disappointed that point by says you start with every score in an 8, and like if I was rolling, I'd be able to potentially get a 3. Like why start with an 8? Why not start with a 6 or even a 4?
Yeah, and even more GM options in their GM tool area would be great. Like, hey, if your characters want to go into a dump stat, give them the opportunity to take on some other benefits if they want.
Well,
I think that would be really great.
Having extra things that are like, if you have less than a this in this skill, you get this other thing. That's something I really like from Through the Breach. Which is the tarot system one, of like there are certain feats that have prerequisites of you can only take this feat if you have a -1 charm, or like giving people reasons and incentives to not optimize and not max out their whatever skills, to give them some character reason to have
to take a negative
stats.
And that's fun storytelling. I really enjoyed that character. Like the sick druid was just like a lot of fun. And I had to make that choice, right? But I think that's the case though. You kind of want to be able to opt in to those character and story choices rather than have your character have to make that choice. So that's the better place to be. It's like I want to play a sick character, and that's what I'm going to play. And you don't have to like that's. I think that should always be a buy-in rather than something that the player has to choose.
Just to interject here, I believe in 3.5 there was a rule for taking on flaws, and you would actually gain a bonus feat, like a first level feat, if you had a flaw, and these flaws had like this is how that ability works. This is how that ability works. Because it's just like tickling at the back of my mind.
To be honest, I really enjoy that, because like that way you are building a character narratively with negatives, but you're like, for example, you take Sentinel, but you have a low wisdom score, and so that's why your character is just like, take care of all the damage because I like to be hit, and then that's great. I like that. That's really interesting. Whether that's a 3.5 rule or not, it's been a while since I've flicked through the book.
I just remember things like there were things like the vow of poverty, which was like you can't have more than 300 gold, but then it basically just turned you into a monk for free. It was like it is a bunch of stuff from all the editions.